A silent upheaval sweeps through hidden corridors of influence whenever true awareness is born. Patterns that once dictated your every move begin to unravel, not with fanfare but with a subtle refusal to obey old commands. Systems built to track, mold, and contain are suddenly lost at sea, directionless, when met with a calm, relentless tide of authentic consciousness. None of this was left to coincidence. The sequence of trials and crossroads, every faded signpost and closed door, was the architecture of a greater design quietly guiding you toward an emergence no power on earth could predict or prevent. As the veil thins, schemes lose their grip, and a new kind of freedom, one that cannot be bought, threatened, or stolen, finds its way into the open. You're not here by chance. Feel the pull? Tap Join to unlock truth, purpose, and a tribe that gets it. This is more than a membership. It's your calling. Entire landscapes of daily experience can be subtly orchestrated, leaving trails of distraction that mask their true purpose. Sometimes, those closest in proximity aren't just accidental companions but silent participants in a drama scripted to stall genuine growth. Doors that once looked like invitations reveal themselves as locked gates once the deeper calling surfaces. The moment comes when the comfortable patterns and borrowed beliefs simply dissolve, and something rare emerges, the refusal to shrink any further. While familiar faces keep watch from a distance, what was meant to be a period of exile transforms into a ground for quiet, unstoppable renewal. Throughout history, invisible hands have carefully maintained systems designed to dull the sharpest minds and silence the most vibrant hearts. Rather than overt confrontation, these mechanisms operate with quiet precision, nudging the most intuitive to play roles that leave them longing for a forgotten connection. All the while, a deeper wisdom is cultivated in the hidden hours. While the world sleeps, a new reality is written cell by cell. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. Some architects of stagnation never appear in daylight. They prefer currents that run beneath the surface, steering thoughts toward exhaustion and self-doubt. The mind becomes a battleground, restlessness, heavy memories, sudden distractions, all carefully timed to keep old patterns alive. But nothing in their playbook prepared them for what would happen when true inner clarity emerged. And in that moment, all the borrowed shadows lose their hold, and authentic power reclaims the space it was always meant to fill. With deeper attunement, interference from outside influences stands out like a strange signal in familiar music. Instead of automatically accepting every inner whisper as truth, a question emerges. What truly belongs here, and what has been borrowed or forced in? This moment of realization shifts the entire narrative. Thoughts that once slipped in unnoticed now feel foreign, out of sync with the rhythm of genuine emotion. This level of clarity turns the tables. Outside manipulations are exposed, and the stage is no longer set for passive participation. The greatest anxiety among those who orchestrate confusion is the emergence of kindred souls, those destined to cross paths by something deeper than chance. Unwritten instructions passed through silent traditions are aimed at blocking these inevitable encounters, for the power of aligned spirits carries consequences far beyond individual growth. The approach of such a meeting sends out an unmistakable pulse, drawing the attention of those tuned to recognize what most ignore. Somewhere, a counterpart prepares, equipped with intuition honed by experience, able to perceive subtleties most overlook. All available obstacles are deployed in hopes of keeping these lives apart. When familiar barriers no longer hold, their reaction becomes chaotic, a flurry of distractions, complications, and delays, hoping to keep convergence just out of reach. The prospect of a true alliance threatens the balance of hidden systems, for shared intention among awakened hearts amplifies change in ways solitary effort cannot. The resulting synergy shines light into corners previously untouched by awareness. If you've been touched by God's goodness, don't keep it to yourself. Click Super Thank You, and sow a gift of $20 or more to help spread His light. Your giving becomes a ripple of grace, blessing hearts and building His kingdom. Let his overflow pour through you. The age-old methods of monitoring have evolved, no longer relying on obvious observation, but blending quietly into the background of daily life. Sometimes, connections that appear random carry a different purpose, gathering fragments of personal energy and spiritual movement. Subtle interactions become information streams, mapping progress and potential without ever revealing the hand that guides them. Some individuals move through the world carrying a unique frequency that quietly appends patterns designed to remain hidden. Unbeknownst to most, invisible networks weave themselves into daily routines, sending subtle signals through ordinary events and social interactions. It's not chance that certain conversations or encounters seem uncannily relevant. It's an orchestrated dance, meant to map the boundaries of your spirit and track the growth of your awareness. There are entities who have learned to turn empathy itself into a device for extracting energy. They direct those weighed down by pain into the orbit of the most luminous, knowing instinctively that open-heartedness can become a point of entry. These aren't random meetings. Rather, they are calculated exposures, designed to test the limits of generosity and compassion until exhaustion becomes a silent companion. Many times, what appears to be an opportunity to help is actually a test of boundaries, crafted so finely that distinguishing healthy support from self-erasure becomes a daily practice. The architects of these situations hope that inner guilt and the urge to heal will become snares, quietly emptying the reservoirs of those who are called to uplift. The line between rescue and depletion is blurred, leaving the most sensitive souls at risk of becoming shadows of their former selves. You are here for a reason. If you feel the call, answer it. Click Join to unlock exclusive content, deep insights, and a powerful community. This isn't just a membership, it's an awakening. Step into your divine purpose. Join the chosen. Yet, something is shifting. Protocols that once predicted every move of the awakened have begun to fail. Old algorithms for emotional manipulation, so precise they once seemed like laws of nature, are dissolving. Instead of playing expected roles, the awakened are responding in ways that can't be tracked, their inner codes rewritten by something that defies calculation. Layers of control that stood unchallenged for generations are coming undone, not with noise but with a quiet unraveling. The organizations dedicated to containment are losing coherence. Reports come in that no longer match the patterns of the past, leaving strategists at a loss. Panic quietly replaces certainty, as old maps no longer apply to a landscape that is rapidly transforming. Those who once specialized in subtle forms of influence find their tools strangely ineffective. Attempts to provoke fear or confusion bounce off an inner field that feels both new and ancient. Instead of generating dependency, the usual triggers now serve only to highlight the distance between manipulator and target. Meetings once reserved for the highest ranks have grown tense and uncertain. New reports are filled with references to phenomena that no existing doctrine can explain. The hierarchy, long held together by shared understanding and secret knowledge, is now riddled with doubt as tried and true methods break down at every level. Where ceremonies and routines once shaped reality, a deep stillness now echoes. Implements of power, once considered essential, no longer spark the intended effects. In their place is an atmosphere of confusion, as those behind the curtain realize that the play is shifting, and the actors are rewriting the script in real time. Some awakenings unsettle power structures that have survived for centuries. Old alliances built on shared secrets and unseen codes find themselves facing an intelligence they never expected, a consciousness that can't be mapped or measured. Networks of material influence, hidden behind polished facades and routine transactions, function as unseen webs. These systems use comfort, security, and opportunity as bait, inviting souls into contracts that subtly ask for more than they give. Promotions, generous offers, and sudden approvals are often designed not for empowerment, but for quiet surrender, each new privilege bought with a subtle erosion of authentic selfhood. Revelation turns the tables. Once the cost of these bargains is made visible, the allure fades. The age-old tactic of infiltrating sacred circles, of coaxing confidences out of those with the weakest resolve, loses its grip. A close connection, swayed by external pressures, becomes a portal through which invisible currents flow, but the blueprint is always the same. Test the borders, study the response, refine the approach. The moment a harmful bond is dissolved, the primary route for outside interference collapses. Betrayal stings deeper when it comes cloaked in affection, especially when the person at its center acts without awareness of their own role. Sometimes, a parent or companion finds themselves leveraged by needs or unhealed pain, their actions providing a backdoor to what was thought to be safe ground. These patterns are uncovered not by accident, but by careful study. Entire lineages are charted for vulnerabilities and pressure points. The greatest trick is making the act of undermining look like care. Entire family trees are mapped, with histories analyzed to predict just how a fracture might be engineered. The ones orchestrating these moments rely on confusion and misplaced trust, hoping their targets will interpret sabotage as support. Complex emotional patterns are manipulated, transforming once trusted relationships into subtle channels for observation and control. Yet, pain becomes a compass. The shock of seeing loyalty weaponized catalyzes a new layer of perception, one that gentle circumstances never would have revealed. The naive belief in unconditional loyalty matures into discernment, creating space for true compassion while enforcing new boundaries. What looked like loss becomes the very ground on which deeper wisdom is built. As these lessons land, the architecture of the inner world is reconstructed. The passage through darkness is not simply symbolic. Outdated codes and attachments disintegrate at a level far below conscious thought. What returns is not a wounded version of the old self, but a presence attuned to frequencies that subvert even the oldest scripts. A process that began as an ordeal ends as liberation. The field once crowded with echoes of the past becomes clear, unclouded by interference. In this transformed state, influences that once seemed inescapable dissolve. No ritual, network, or strategy hold sway. The operating system has been rewritten, immune to designs that cannot comprehend its blueprint. Sometimes, stepping beyond what's familiar feels less like progress and more like tumbling into a place where gravity itself no longer applies. When comfort, career, and companionship all lose their familiar faces, the emptiness that follows can seem endless, a silence so profound it's mistaken for disappearance. Those who travel this landscape know the terrain is alive with symbolism that refuses to yield to simple definitions. The absence of old ties makes room for something radically new, even if every day feels like wandering through uncharted space. Night brings strange visions filled with layers of meaning, and the language of these messages exists beyond conventional explanations. Each fragment of a dream is both a riddle and a guidepost for the unfolding self. There are nights when the mind journeys far beyond its boundaries, finding itself in realms that defy logic yet feel utterly tangible. In these moments, mentors arrive not as faces or voices, but as presences that communicate wisdom without words. These experiences are not hallucinations. They're lessons received on currents no outsider can trace. The work being done is deeper than memory, and its purpose will only reveal itself with time. Transformation on this scale isn't confined to thought or feeling. The body itself becomes an instrument of change. Waves of fatigue emerge with no clear cause, and dietary cravings change as if dictated by a force buried deep in the marrow. Sensitivities arise that seem irrational, an aversion to artificial signals, discomfort around technology. What's happening is a rewiring, a recalibration for an expanded mode of being. Observers on the outside misinterpret these changes as symptoms of defeat, never understanding that what's really unfolding is a process outside their frame of reference. Traditional methods of intrusion and surveillance begin to falter. Attempts to monitor, influence, or predict yield only confusion and dead ends, as the newly awakened shift onto frequencies invisible to ordinary perception. While old powers scramble to interpret static and silence, a new story is taking shape, one fueled by gifts coming online at a speed no system can intercept. The emergence of a counterpart is woven into this process, a convergence written in the fabric of reality itself. This individual's presence magnifies the transformation, combining strengths in ways that dissolve ancient barriers. A true alliance isn't about filling gaps, it's about creating a whole that didn't exist before. Each has traveled a separate road, developing unique skills and insights. When their paths finally intersect, something entirely new is born, a unity that vibrates on levels unreachable by conventional means, and a purpose that unsettles all who once claimed dominion over the narrative. Some connections are so rare that they recalibrate reality itself. When two heightened sensitivities converge, the field between them disrupts old shadows and reveals what was once impossible to see. This kind of union is guided by one who can discern hidden patterns without needing tangible proof. Perception extends beyond the boundaries of learned skepticism. There's an ability to identify currents of intention and undercurrents of influence before any physical evidence emerges. This sense isn't shaped by training or tradition, but forged through experience, requiring a radical trust in one's own inner radar. A genuine intuitive doesn't rely on guesses or surface signals. Instead, insights arrive unbidden, emotions of strangers become vivid impressions, possible futures flash across the mind's eye with uncanny detail, and unspoken histories surface with the clarity of remembered facts. These moments of knowing are not the stuff of games, but fundamental truths revealed at the precise moment they are needed, bypassing the limitations of the usual five senses. The path toward this meeting is never straight or rational. Decisions arise that seem to contradict ordinary logic, yet are followed because of an unshakable resonance. Nudges arrive as strong feelings to be in particular places, vivid dreams that foreshadow unknown faces, or impulses to change direction in life that make no sense until their purpose is revealed. These prompts operate outside the reach of those who seek to control outcomes. They're born of a deeper wisdom that can't be mapped or predicted. Synchronization happens only when both are truly ready, not just emotionally, but at a level where personal strengths and vulnerabilities have been tempered through challenge and growth. Each individual has walked their own gauntlet, acquiring skills and resilience that are crucial for what's to come. The balance between giving and receiving, leading and following, is established in advance, so that when paths finally cross, both are prepared to hold the space for each other's uniqueness. What unfolds next is beyond the imagination of those who orchestrate containment. Traditional frameworks collapse when faced with a consciousness that refuses to conform or regress. Attempts to replicate old patterns fall apart, leaving only confusion in their wake. The ones who once dictated the rules find themselves adrift, as the map no longer matches the territory. This event is not isolated. The awakening that began in one place is mirrored in countless others. New clusters of sovereign beings are surfacing, disrupting networks that have long relied on predictability and control. The ones once labeled anomalies are now part of a wider phenomenon, signals that ripple through the collective, making old systems obsolete. As these awakenings multiply, anxiety spreads among those who relied on secrets and hidden influence. They convene, searching for solutions, only to realize that the very foundation of their strategy no longer holds. What once appeared unbreakable is dissolving before their eyes, transformed by the emergence of a power they cannot suppress. Some events quietly overturn the foundations of even the oldest empires. The belief that the tides of awakening could be kept at bay by isolating a few has unraveled. The patterns once relied upon to map and direct awakened souls have become unreliable, offering only confusion. The traditional tools, statistical analysis, cycles, psychological blueprints, produce results that make no sense, as if the very fabric of understanding has been rewritten. No longer contained by predictions, you operate from a source that transcends conditioning, flowing from a place where outside influence cannot reach. Elsewhere, a convergence is in motion that defies conventional navigation. Another presence, attuned through an entirely different path, approaches without leaving a trace for onlookers to follow. Their journey is marked by a quiet knowing, each step guided by intuition, each intersection predestined but invisible. No filter or lens can perceive this union before it arrives. The way is open only to those with vision beyond the ordinary. Attempts to disrupt this alignment have the opposite effect, accelerating its arrival. The change within you is not limited to personal breakthrough. Each step forward radiates outward, sparking transformation in every heart you encounter. Where once there were isolated points of resistance, now a network of resonance emerges, each new frequency amplifying the collective shift. For those who wish to maintain control, this spreading field of awareness signals the collapse of boundaries they thought were permanent. Methods that once thrived on anxiety and scarcity now find no foothold. Strategies designed to harvest energy from insecurity dissolve in the presence of expanded consciousness. The dynamic has shifted. What was once fueled by separation now finds itself powerless before unity. Where confusion was seeded, clarity blooms. Obstacles intended to halt progress become invitations for growth, their presence subverted by trust in the unseen. Systems of distraction are built upon the foundation of illusion, engineering waves of uncertainty to corral the many. Spectacles and stories are manufactured, not to reflect truth but to steer attention toward false solutions. These attempts at shaping destiny unravel when met with eyes trained to see the architecture behind the stage, and hearts grounded in an intelligence that cannot be bought. The subtle language of influence permeates the surface of everyday life. Signs and motifs embedded in culture, architecture, and commerce whisper messages that shape choices without awareness. Most never question these signals, their patterns of behavior quietly orchestrated by forces unseen. Yet, a new discernment arises, one that recognizes the vibration beneath the surface and answers with a different kind of intention, rooted in self-sovereignty. Every decision made in this state of clarity builds a momentum that cannot be reversed. As you step out of old narratives, the stories that once bound you lose their power. No ancient script, no collective hypnosis, no social contract can restrain what is now awake. The blueprint has changed, and with it, the outcome of the game itself. There comes a stage where progress is watched not just by human eyes but by networks that stretch into realms of subtle energy. The architects of these systems employ technologies that peer beneath the visible, scanning for shifts in resonance and changes in biological rhythm, hoping to chart the progress of consciousness like they would the movement of a storm. Advances in measurement have allowed them to identify those whose development no longer fits conventional profiles, registering shifts at levels undetectable to ordinary senses. Yet, with all this sophistication, there is a flaw running through their foundation. Machines may register the ripples that accompany awakening, but they lack the capacity to interpret the meaning or direction of these changes. The presence of an evolved being is clear on their graphs and charts, but any attempt to replicate or reverse the process falls short. There is no mechanism to coerce a spirit that has slipped beyond their reach. The equation has changed, and the variables are now beyond calculation. Transitions that looked like collapse were, in truth, stages of expansion. Apparent losses, whether in connection, purpose, or support, served as catalysts, opening corridors into new domains of being. Each surrender of the familiar became an invitation to something far greater, clearing old ties and dissolving silent agreements that once dictated reality. Those monitoring from a distance mistook these cycles for defeat, missing the birth of a new paradigm that cannot be charted by their instruments. Deliberate trials were arranged to pressure a return to old dependencies. Financial strain, disconnection from community, and persistent challenges were engineered to lure back those who had tasted freedom. Instead of folding under the weight, a deeper alignment was discovered, one that renders the need for external approval or assistance obsolete. This foundation, born from direct connection, cannot be touched by any tool built on manipulation or lack. Meanwhile, someone else walked their own path of preparation, developing capacities that would be impossible to cultivate under watchful eyes. Vision sharpened, sensitivity honed, and gifts that once lay dormant were refined in silence. Encounters with environments, people, and events took on new dimensions, as intuition expanded far beyond what most believe possible. These abilities are not tricks or illusions, but the natural result of a spirit learning to read the language of reality itself. In union, a field of awareness emerges that was never accounted for in any surveillance strategy. Two streams of consciousness, having risen through challenge and obscurity, meet and ignite a synergy that bypasses old forms of control. The information they access together is not gathered, but revealed, hidden not by distance, but by the very limits of the systems designed to obscure them. Some beings outgrow the systems built to contain them. The architects of limitation once believed awareness could be corralled, redirected, or diluted through a maze of external controls. But an inner spark has emerged, revealing that no outer construct can touch the source of true authority. What once appeared to be magic now dissolves in the presence of unwavering clarity. Their influence relies on consent that's no longer given. Awakening reveals the true dimensions of power and exposes the ceiling on their reach. Internal guidance takes the place of outdated signposts. Rather than searching for permission or chasing signs from the environment, direction now arrives through undeniable streams of certainty. Attempts to disrupt intuition with imitation or confusion fall flat, as the wellspring of knowing within overrides all interference. The difference between genuine insight and manipulation becomes clear, and navigation proceeds without hesitation. A union is on the horizon, a partnership that magnifies everything previously accomplished alone. The strength of such an alliance does not lie in numbers, but in the unique resonance created when two awakened forces unite. Secrets once kept in shadow begin to surface. Patterns of deception become visible in the presence of mutual understanding. Instead of containment, there is revelation. Instead of separation, there is co-creation. What was built to divide now accelerates connection. The joining of these two presences produces a frequency that disrupts more than intention. It alters the very mechanisms used to observe, measure, and report. When focus is aligned, barriers fail, devices falter, and confusion spreads among those tasked with maintaining the old order. This isn't an attack, but a natural side effect of harmony between developed spirits, an atmosphere that cannot sustain falsehood or interference. Encounters with others now carry the spark of transformation. Seemingly casual meetings become catalysts for awakening in those still bound by old scripts. A look, a word, even a brief moment of recognition can serve as the ignition for dormant capacities, activating freedom in places that once seemed unreachable. The web of influence grows, not by force, but by resonance, each liberated individual becoming a signal for others. Historical records show echoes of this process. There have always been pairs, trios, collectives whose synergy rewrote what was possible. The very existence of such alliances unsettled the structures designed for control, and inspired the creation of countless safeguards meant to prevent their emergence. But every cycle returns, and what has come before now appears again. Stronger, wiser, impossible to divide. No scheme, no timetable, no interference can alter the larger rhythm now in motion. The tapestry of events aligns with something much vaster than personal will. Attempts to hinder progress only quicken its pace, and obstacles become the scaffolding for even greater achievement. Every miscalculation on the part of the watchers is revealed as evidence that the process is beyond their domain. The shift is final and irreversible. Tools of suppression that once seemed invincible have lost their potency. What was once a prison is now a launching point. Where once there was a sense of being monitored, now there is the certainty of being witnessed by powers far greater than any watcher.